Moses' preparation. This section describes the moment Moses was called at Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai, and how God equipped him with the first sign to demonstrate his power. The core purpose was to liberate the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt after more than 400 years. God heard the cries of his people and remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses was chosen as the mediator, the one who would convey God's command and lead the nation out of Egypt. The mission required Moses and Aaron to confront Pharaoh, the most powerful king at the time, to demand, "Let my people go." When called by God at the burning bush, Moses expressed doubt about the mission's authenticity and whether people would believe him. Moses said, "But they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, 'The Lord has not appeared to you.'" To dispel this doubt, God performed the first miracle. God asked, "What is that in your hand?" Moses answered, "A staff." He commanded, "Throw it on the ground." The staff was an ordinary, familiar tool of a shepherd. The command was to let go of what was familiar, placing trust in change. Moses obeyed and threw it down. The staff turned into a snake. Moses was afraid and ran from it. This demonstrated God's power of transmutation, changing matter. Moses' fear showed that this was a genuine miracle, beyond nature. God commanded, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." This was the climax of the test of obedience. Grabbing a snake by the tail is the most dangerous and reckless act. The snake would turn back to bite. Moses had to overcome his survival instinct and fear. Moses obeyed, reached out his hand, and grabbed it. The snake turned back into a staff in his hand. This proved that God controls life and death, and he would protect those who obey. The staff returned to its original state so Moses could carry it. This miracle was intended to prove to Moses himself, and later to the people of Israel, that the Lord had indeed appeared and sent him. It dissolved Moses' initial doubt, transforming a common staff into a holy staff. From then on, the simple shepherd's staff became the staff of God, a symbol of supernatural power and God's companionship. The miracle taught Moses that the power was not in the staff or in himself, but in absolute obedience to a seemingly dangerous command, proving that faith is the prerequisite for God's work. This event was the foundation for Moses to confidently carry out his mission to preach and perform greater miracles before Pharaoh, starting with the repetition of this miracle with Aaron. The miracle of the staff turning into a serpent before Pharaoh. This event was the first public miracle performed by Moses and Aaron to confirm their authority and that of God before the stubborn king of Egypt. The Lord had instructed Moses and Aaron on the specific strategy for when Pharaoh demanded a sign of power. Aaron, the spokesman, would be the one to perform the action. Moses and Aaron came before Pharaoh and his officials. Aaron obeyed and threw his staff down on the ground right before the king. The staff immediately turned into a serpent. This miracle instantly proved that they were not ordinary people but had supernatural power backing them. The counterfeit magic. Pharaoh, to protect his prestige and power, did not accept the miracle easily. The king summoned the sorcerers, magicians, and enchanters of Egypt, the so-called magicians of Madi. Using their secret arts, these men also threw down their staffs. Each staff turned into a serpent. This indicated that the power of darkness, often understood as being from Satan, also had the ability to imitate some miracles to cause confusion and challenge God's power. The assertion of supreme power. This was the decisive moment that affirmed the difference between the power of God and the magic of humans. The serpent from Aaron's staff swallowed all the serpents of the magicians. This act of swallowing demonstrated absolute triumph. God's power is unique and supreme. It not only created a miracle but also devoured all opposing powers, proving that the Egyptian miracles were merely imitation or limited. Instruction for Pharaoh. The miracle clearly proved that the Lord was stronger than any deity or power that Pharaoh and Egypt worshipped. Although he witnessed undeniable proof of supreme power, Pharaoh's heart remained hardened. The king refused to listen to Moses and Aaron. This story shows that a miracle does not always lead to faith. When people choose to focus on the hardness of their hearts instead of listening to God's message, even the greatest miracle becomes ineffective. However, for Moses and Aaron, this event was a victory. They had completed the test of obedience, and the miracle was confirmed by God, equipping them with the confidence to proceed with the remaining 9 plagues. This event opened the way for the series of 10 plagues, each one a direct confrontation between the God of Israel and a specific deity of Egypt. The meaning of the surprising challenge of obedience. This miracle is a profound lesson about obedience and the power of God. The unreasonable command, throwing the staff down to turn it into a snake, and then having to grab it by the tail, a very dangerous act for a snake, was a command that seemed irrational or very dangerous according to common sense. Obedience proves faith. Moses had to trust absolutely in God's word rather than his natural fear. The act of obeying this command demonstrated Moses' faith and willingness to become a leader. The miracle proved that Moses and Aaron were those sent by God, the Most High. The fact that Aaron's serpent swallowed the magician's serpents showed that God's power far surpasses all powers derived from magic, sorcery, or any other forces, often attributed to Satan, affirming him as the Almighty ruling over both the natural and the supernatural. Lesson for Christians: unconditional obedience. Sometimes, God calls us to do things that go against human logic, ability, or safety. Obedience to those seemingly unreasonable or challenging commands will prove the true power of God in our lives. The symbolic staff. The staff was initially an ordinary shepherd's tool, but when yielded to God and obeyed, it became the staff of God, a symbol of His authority and presence. Our lives and ordinary tools can also become powerful when we dedicate them to God and obey Him. The miracle of the staff turning into a serpent is not just a supernatural event, but also a lesson about profound trust and absolute obedience to pave the way for God to manifest His glorious power. If you enjoy this content, please help my channel grow by subscribing now. Thank you very much.